Welcome back to the Kids Ministry and Leadership Podcast from Kidmin Collective. Monthly episodes featuring leading global Kidmin voices, real stories, and practical leadership tools. Let's get into today's episode.
Welcome to the Kids Ministry and Leadership Podcast. Today, I've got my good friends with me, Matt and Andre, and today we're going to be talking about developing resilient kids.
No small task. No, guys. That's why I like that we're this group. We'll give as much as we can to help out. But yeah, I'm excited about the conversation.
Oh, awesome. Well, I think it's good to start with what is resilience. But then also I think from my perspective, being a wellbeing perspective is very, very different than the leadership and ministry context. So I think we'll probably bounce between the two of those. So let's talk about what is resilience.
Yeah, there's so many different layers to the question, but I think about it's kind of the ability to adapt, to recover, adapt, and then continue on. So it's can a child receive something that's hard, be able to feel that, to be able to recover, and then adapt in the situation and then continue. So it's almost like not bounce back to how things were, because it's really easy to go through a hard thing and end up where you were, but it's actually like bouncing back and growing forward. And being able to develop the tools, develop some of the ways of being that will help a child be able to walk through life in a way that makes them resilient in this world that's always going to be faced with challenges and troubles.
Wow, that's so good. I think it's interesting. I think resilience has a lot more information to it now. Like I remember growing up and it's like, anyone else grow up with, they're like, shake it off, you'll be all right. And I think with so much research now in safe, trusted adults and what that looks like and developing that, we are coming from a really different approach now.
Right.
So how would you say that you are cultivating that within ministry?
You as you even said that, just to shake it off, and just like that was my upbringing.
Yeah, I'm gonna need an hour with her later after this to break that heart.
But that's shifted, right? And so I think there was a time in ministry where we saw kids, and it was the come on, if a kid was anxious about going into a classroom, you got that, just go on in there.
You're right.
But now we think about resilience in it. It is, can I manage my emotions? Can I understand who I am? Do I know how I'm wired? Do I know how I'm developed? And there's such a big emphasis on that for our families that I think our ministries have to have it. Because if we miss that, then the parents ultimately gonna be like, I'm not worried about the bells and the whistles and the slide and all this stuff. Can my kid be themselves and be
Well, yeah, I love that. Be themselves and be safe. It's really looking at the why behind the what.
Yeah.
And we always say in therapy that behavior is communication. And it's not always it's a naughty kid or whatever it is, or get over it and move on. It's actually going, do you see my child? Do you hear them? Are you understanding what is going on for them? And can you come alongside them and support them with their next steps or whatever that looks
So
like?
good. You're
What you said about growth.
Yeah, right. I just think so much what you hear people say, especially in ministry, just in general, to be seen, known, and loved. Those three things, are those actually happening inside of your ministry work? And I think the order matters too, right? We have a God who sees us. So, do the kids feel seen? Because that's, that lets them know that someone, an adult, someone is actually seeing them for who they are. Are they known? The only way you can get to know them is after you've seen them. You got to spend time with them and get to know them deeply, And then that's where love kind of comes from, our expression of love, because you can take those two things and then express love. And from there, I think you can have conversations that actually matter with kids inside their ministry, inside your ministry. But I would even say, I know we'll explore it a little bit, but we think a lot about the kids being resilient, but I think at some point we'll have a conversation here in a little bit about parent resilience is as important as a child's resilience. So I know we'll get there, but being a new dad of a 6-month-old, I'm in that space of okay, what does it mean? What does resilience mean for me? But yeah, I'll
Am I resilient? It's like the mirror. When you have kids, it's like the mirror gets put up and you're like, oh, okay. Now that I'm learning about this from I have to realize that I have to reflect on some of those things. Am I resilient? What am I doing in situations like you're saying, Andre, before about what's my emotional regulation rough for me to be able to come alongside a child and co-regulate with them, that means that I can't be the chaos. I have to be the calm coming into that experience. And that's like you say, it's not just in the home, or it's also, in our ministry in working with the kids. So
I can't even equip volunteer for that. I'm thinking about it for me signing up a volunteer back in the day. We didn't talk about it. It was,
no.
hey, here's your shift, second and fourth Sundays, 8 o'clock service. You get it, but then there has to be an additional teaching and support for that. But the leader has, we talk about parents having that, our leaders have to have that. Like, do they understand what resilience is? Do they understand how they're wired? Do they understand their growth opportunities? Because then otherwise I'm trying to pour something into somebody, something that I don't have.
Yeah.
So how do we
Well,
create that for our
I
team?
get that. Yeah, definitely. I think what you were saying too, but like it's a mindset shift, isn't it? Like,
Yeah.
I know from a counseling perspective, we do a lot of reframing and reconstructing thoughts. And one of the things is teaching kids, like, this is a hard situation, but I can do hard things. This is a struggle, but I have strengths to help me with that struggle. And like you're saying, Andre, it's not just working with the kids on that, but it's actually working with the leaders. Like, this is a hard situation, or you're navigating this in ministry. Like, how can you come alongside them and coach them first so that they can be that safe base for the children?
And
Yeah.
there's no award for it. Like, we love a good trophy. We love something that says like I accomplished the 6 steps to be a resilient volunteer. But it's an inner heart work that has to happen to that as well. So you don't always get a chance to just like wear the badge, but it's
Yep.
time over time. So we like to say time over time creates history. So it's time, truth, or trust, then truth. So I'm gonna spend time with you to earn your trust to then be able to share that truth. 'Cause if I just run right at it, I'm bouncing. I'm backing away because I don't feel safe. And so, how do you build resilience when there's not even the time or the trust to share that truth?
Man,
Exactly.
that's from a ministry leader you're into a volunteer's life, right? Like you have to create that space to be able to do that with your volunteer, or the time, trust, and truth. Right. But to your point, it's an overflow, right? So like, I think you're so right. It can't just be the pastor or the ministry leader's responsibility to do those things. That's too much of a burden and weight for them. So when you're talking about crafting, creating volunteers or helping volunteers in their own resilience, like you have to take time to spend with them as volunteers as well to understand their story. As you understand their story, you can understand how they operate in the world. You usually see it on a Sunday morning when they come in, right? Because if there's a frantic or flurry inside of them, like am I as a ministry leader able to slow down enough to recognize that in them, to be that compassionate, like uh, emotionally connected person to them to say, "Yeah, I see something's going on," helping them reframe, and then using that as an opportunity to help them see children the same way, or they could, pass through that. But it takes time. Yeah,
It does.
it takes emotionally resilient ministry leader as well. Am I a resilient ministry leader? Right. Right.
Rather than no, to answer that question, the unity of mostly resilient leader. That's a book, man. Sure, right there.
But there's bounce back and growth, right? So if you find yourself returning in the same situation back to that same response, then something hasn't been built or something hasn't been addressed, and so you don't have growth. And so I think you can go back and look when volunteers call in. Do I become frantic because that then carries into my ministry? So if that's the case, then I need to figure out how to be resilient and trust God. He's got this,
Yeah.
and I don't have to worry about how many volunteers are in the room, even though I know there's a safety control mechanism. But more importantly than that is I'm carrying in whatever I'm packing inside of me into that situation.
Yeah.
So have to ask that of ourselves.
I think that's really important because, like, what we know from like kids as they're growing in their communication and development, what they pick up from trusted adults is their presence and their expression first before the cognitive and the conversation. And so, like, how you're coming into a space is really important. Yeah,
And,
I love that.
and I just think about resilience. I don't know why. For some reason, I just think about trucks, or maybe I even think about like the military, right? And oftentimes they look at where they're going, or they look at the trajectory and prepared for it. And I don't know if we do that for kids. And so we're talking about building resilience, but how often do I really spend time evaluating where they're going, what they're experiencing, or do I just take my experience and say, well, be resilient like me? Well, what I went through is totally different. AI, social media, a digital presence. Like, the only thing, I got little floppy photos of me, and I'm like, look how grainy this is. And my kids, like, this was me from the last 10 years of my life. And so are we looking at the trajectory that they're on and building a ministry and a leadership team that will help develop resilience 20 years from now? We don't know what it looks like. We got to look at it.
Gosh, that's so
And if resilience is solely stacked on how you're being resilient, then we're missing the mark, because it's the resilience of Jesus.
Yeah.
He was the ultimate resilience, right? And he showed us what resilience is like. And so a lot of times people look at us for resilience, as they should. Hopefully we're showing them mature faith and a mature resilience, but also we're not perfect resilience. We're going to have our moments. And so, like, how are we helping them through a spiritual lens in a scripture lens to be able to see how Jesus encountered and interacted with people. So they go to him and look to him first.
Yeah.
Because he encountered all the hard times and all the troubles. And what was his response? How did he act around the people that mattered most to him, which were all people that he encountered? And so, yeah, I think there's something in that space. And
Well, it's so true. And we've been talking about this before, is that Jesus was moved with compassion. And I think sometimes when we're in the midst of ministry and even in life, like we can call out stuff in kids, but it's publicly. And it's like, oh, you got to deal with that or whatever. And it's quite embarrassing for them. And it brings up those hard emotions. But what we've noticed about the nature of Jesus is that he always took people aside. He always took people aside in those moments and saw them and their story and the background and what was happening, and he sat with them and he saw them and he gave them feedback and love and comfort and all of those beautiful things. And I think even in the midst of our ministry, I love what you said. It's like the trajectory of like where this child is going to be at. Like, do I stop and be present enough to not say something publicly and embarrass a child, but privately and really reflect the nature of Christ? Because it's not about my needs. And often we see with kids, like they don't trust adults because we all have an agenda. Oh, you know what I mean? Like, you got to comply to my amazingly written sermon prep. Like, and this is the outcome I want of it. But like, oftentimes we don't see, like, we get the outcome because we want compliance. But where are we going to be more committed, I guess, to connection with kids?
And that connection will strip down the labels that have come from the exterior world. Like the worst thing ever would be the same label that the world placed on you, the same label that the church placed on you. I talk too much. I do this. I'm this way. I'm that way. And to get that to then echo on it in the church, why would I want to come to church?
Exactly.
And so how do we reframe those labels for kids to strip them off so that, to your point, they know how they're designed and have that relationship through Christ?
that's right. Yeah, that's what I was exactly thinking is like so much of those labels. It's interesting because we were talking about that obviously recently, the labels that get placed on kids. But it's an identity thing, right? The safest place you can be is inside of the identity of Christ found in you, right? And so, like, they have to have that foundation. And even though it's just, I got to hear. I don't have the memory enough. I don't have a memory like an elephant, so I have to like. But like, the idea was like, I read this and I thought it was so compelling. It's faith gives kids a place to stand when everything else feels shaky. And I just thought that is so true. Like that's what faith is supposed to do. But if the church and the world look too familiar, they don't really find that faith has anything different to offer them. So they get confused as to where that resilience and where that strength to persevere and to keep going.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think ultimately, like we get to model and reflect the nature of Christ in our parenting, in our ministries, like, kindness, love, compassion, like unconditional love. Or I think all of these things are a beautiful place. Like one of the, I guess from a wellbeing perspective, what we do with a lot of kids is we offer them the opportunity to replay and repair a situation. And I think, are we allowing kids by modeling the nature of Christ to say, I'm going to give you the opportunity to replay the situation and repair it because I'm committed to you. I'm committed to your growth in your, yeah.
Yeah, that's so.
We're all over here like, huh, yeah. So wherever you're listening from, like, used to be, we're all just like, man.
But I think it's like, it's cool because like we get to shape this now as leaders with the information that, we came from Shake It Off to now we get to sit and be present and be with kids. And like, I know even something in our family, we do this thing where it's like, can we restart the day? All the time in our family. And it made me 10 minutes in because we're all wake up in a hot mess. That it happens, or like it could be like 5:30 in the afternoon. I even remember one of my boys looking at me. He's like, "Mom, I've had a hard day. Do you mind if I restart?"
Yeah.
And I was like, "Yeah, let's restart the day. Let's give kids the opportunity to reflect the nature of Christ. And I forgive you. Like it's okay. It's okay to restart the day, and it's okay, like because that's giving kids the opportunity to say, like, I'm safe with you. I'm safe to have a mistake and not be okay, but you're going to give me the opportunity to restart and replay.
Imagine a parent
Yeah.
receiving either a resource or hearing that
Yeah.
and say, hey, tell me what you got. I got a 19-year-old and a 17-year-old. And there's some points where I'm just like, it'd be just to get the permission to restart or to know how to have that language for a parent would be huge. Because you may get 10 years and you're like, I only got 8 years left. Like, did I do right? But to know that, man, in the same way that we get a chance to go to our Father and ask for that forgiveness, that we can then receive it and be able to live that out for our kids is huge.
Yeah, definitely.
But all the drinking it all in and just thinking through the ministry lens and everything. And I mean, I think what Andre is saying is so powerful, because what we said at the very beginning is the language that we have is the language that kids need. And so to have a resource or to have something that offers a new language for parents, something that's easily accessible. What can I say to my child in this moment that wouldn't tear them down, but would help them repair? But I also think so much of it is helping the child understand how to tell their own narrative, like not the narrative they believe, but they have to be able to actually communicate the narrative that they're feeling. So that way, and this is, I think, the tendency being a new dad. My tendency is going to be to want, and I don't know if it's innate in males as well, but like, I want to repair that for you, so that way you don't have to deal with that anymore.
Yeah,
I think it's very natural to want to do that. But I think when I think about Jesus is like he was obviously able to repair things if he just wanted to at the touch, but he also was very inquisitive to help people come to their own understanding
wow.
of
Yeah.
what was being repaired or what he was repairing. I mean, we don't teach the woman in the well in children's ministry very often, but when we look at how he encountered the woman at the well, and he starts asking questions, and she's like, I don't have a husband. He knows this, but that was the narrative she was telling herself. And he said, but you had 5 husbands. And she just needed to like reframe to see, so that way Jesus could enter in and offer her the truer source of life in her. And so I think as ministry leaders, like pulling aside, that's so important. And then also, I think being inquisitive before we're trying to be responsive. Like we try to respond so quick. Part of the time, I think it's because we're so busy in the moment. I don't know about you, Andre, but services fly by. We have goals and agendas. We were talking about that earlier. I have to get this service done, and there's these pieces that have to happen. And so in order to get through them, I need this child to behave properly
Right.
in order so I can get to the end of this goal that I have for myself. And I think that's obviously, you have to keep that in mind. But didn't Jesus have a goal and an ultimate end? No, it was something he had in front of him, but he never stopped thinking about, how do I take the time to go away to speak to this one individual? And so it's time consuming, but I definitely know when we do that it's an opportunity where we see Jesus in our lives and in our ministry. So
Time consuming, but life changing.
yeah, for sure.
I love that. Well, I reckon we could talk about this forever. We might need to have 37 parts. But thank you so much for joining us today on the Kids Ministry and Leadership Podcast. We love that you've joined us. We'd love you to share this with your team. But we will see you next month.